Is this going to have any legal or constitutional consequences? Will it open up the round of constitutional debate? And I do have a second question.
We'll have to hold to one question per reporter.
Throw your question in now, and I'll decide if I want to answer it.
I also want to know why you voted against Distinct Society in '95, and now you're supporting the idea of Quebecers as a nation today.
Well, I think what's important here, my view. I wasn't secret about this in the last, in particular the last year since I became Prime Minister. I mean, my preference was the definition of Quebecers be left to the National Assembly, to the Quebec legislature. But it was the Bloc Québécois that ultimately insisted that the Parliament of Canada make this decision. And it was the Bloc Québécois that came forward with a resolution that, while flawed, had some important elements to it. First of all, it didn't ask for anything for Quebec, which is a legal jurisdiction. What it asked was a recognition of the Québécois, which are a group of people, a sociological, a cultural group. And obviously, that made it much easier to deal with. But we insist, if we're going to have a recognition of Quebec nation, and I say again, and I know that some people in the rest of Canada will have some difficulty with this, but I repeat that, the Québécois are a group of people with a language, a culture, a history, and identity. And according to the dictionary definition, that constitutes, in cultural, sociological terms, a nation. And our fathers of Confederation used this kind of terminology quite regularly. If you look back at what John A. Macdonald said, Georges-Étienne Cartier, they said similar things at the time. So I think the motion we've put forward that obviously recognizes the full reality of the Quebec nationhood, not just that Quebec is a nation, but it's a nation within Canada, inextricably linked through its history, through its role in the country today, and through the future we share together. Inextricably linked to this country, we believe this is an important act, both an act of recognition and an act of reconciliation. And Quebecers, I think, wrongly, but nevertheless really, often got the impression in the past generation that the rest of the country was not prepared to recognize who they were. And this has given us an opportunity to clarify that, and I believe ultimately to reconcile the debate we've had in this country, where we can say that we recognize Quebecers for who they are, but not just for who they are, but for the important role they play in this country. We should never forget, we often forget because English is the language of the majority. We also often forget that it was French-speaking Canadians that founded Canada. It was French-speaking Canadians were the first people to call themselves Canadians. The first group of people had a vision of a country from coast to coast. And so, as I say, this is an important opportunity to reconcile ourselves to that reality. And I think Quebecers will respond to it. And I think what it does, as I say, it's important for national unity. What it does is it forces the Bloc, the Parti Québécois, to admit that what they're arguing for is not a recognition or acceptance of Quebec or what Quebec is. Far from it. It's simply a question of independence, of creating an independent country. And Quebecers have said repeatedly, when given a choice between Canada or breaking up Canada, they don't want to break up Canada. That's why the separatists have to keep throwing in words like association and partnership to convince people they're not really voting for a breakup, because that's not what Quebecers want. And so I think this is, when Canadians reflect on it, when they see the reaction in Quebec, I think there'll be a comfort level with it. This is not, as I said before in French, not a constitutional amendment, not a legal text. This is merely a declaration of recognition and an act of reconciliation. And I think it's important for the country, and it's apparently so good for the country that the Bloc Québécois wants to jump on the bandwagon now. This is their, as I said earlier, their third position in 3 days on the issue. And I think now they have to explain what their raison d'etre is in Ottawa if they're going to pass a resolution put forward by the Prime Minister that endorses the unity of Canada.